A credit score is determined by 5 key factors: payment history, 35%, credit utilization, 30%, length of credit history, 15%, new credit inquiries, 10%, and credit mix, 10%. Payment history is the most influential as lenders assess reliability in repaying debt. Credit utilization measures the percentage of available credit used, with a recommended rate below 30% to avoid negative impact. The length of credit history reflects account age, favoring long-standing accounts. New credit inquiries, particularly hard inquiries from loan applications, can temporarily lower scores, so spacing out applications is advisable. A diverse credit mix of revolving credit and installment loans demonstrates responsible credit management. Strategies for improvement include making on-time payments, keeping balances low, maintaining old accounts, and applying for credit only when necessary. Understanding these components helps individuals build strong credit profiles for financial opportunities.
Howard, I want to start with you. How has the credit score formula evolved over the past 20 years? And what trends concern you most today?
Well, the credit score formula, the FICO score, which is Fair Isaac Company, developed this using math, frankly. And they turned around and built this algorithm that can score people. Because before, probably 25 years ago, maybe even longer, it was done manually by a loan manager, and basically it was not a scientific thing. If you had a good credit history, oh, okay, I know John. He's a good guy. He'll pay us back. And what Fair Isaac came up with was a formula to take the personal thoughts out of it and basically have it quantitatively and analyzed. And that has really improved the chances of lenders' ability to get repaid. And then there's another large credit analysis group, Vantage Score, I'm sorry. And that was designed by the credit bureaus, but the reality is they just didn't want to pay Fair Isaac, or FICO as it's better known, any money, so they used their score. But at the end of the day, that algorithm has proven that it does work. But the simple thing is, if you take credit out, pay it off. If you can't pay it off immediately when the bill comes in, just make sure that you don't take too much credit out, and try to keep the utilization under 10% if you can. Meaning, if you have a credit card that allows you a $20,000 balance, don't carry more than $2,000 on that. And that's between the payment history and the credit utilization score. That's 65% of your FICO score, and that's a big number. So if you keep those two things healthy, the rest is pretty easy.
Anthony, I'm a fan of your book, Your Score. In it, you pull back the curtain on the mystery of credit scoring. What's one insider secret that consumers almost never realize about these 5 factors?
Piggybacking on Howard's point about the FICO score and what it's comprised of, one overlooked part is that 35% of your FICO score, the biggest chunk, comes down to your payment history, whether you're paying your bills on time, and 30% comes down to whether what your balances are on those credit cards. So it's almost as much of a percentage as whether you pay your bills on time as what kind of balances you have on your credit cards or revolving credit card debt. But now the most important aspect of that is really the due date on those cards. Many people come to us and they say, well, my scores they're kind of bouncing around all over the place from month to month. Why is that? And that's because your credit card balances only report every 30 to 45 days. So that means even if you pay your balance off in full each month, if it's a different date than when they report to the credit bureaus, your credit score could bounce around wildly. So I tell everyone that you should find out the reporting dates for each of your credit cards and set up your auto payment to pay it off a few days in advance before that date. That way, your credit score is going to stay optimal every month in and out.
Cullen, how did you first identify rent reporting as an untapped path to credit building?
Ironically, I was living in Hawaii. We talked about earlier, and I had moved there, and I had a thin credit profile because there it's just a different economy, and we were renting, and I was like, well, how do I get my rent added to my credit report? And I started Googling it, and I couldn't find a solution except I found a story that says Experian's now going to add rent to credit reports, and I'm like, oh great, I'm going to go sign up. Turns out that was a bunch of baloney. They were only collecting data from a few of the big, large property management companies. So about a year later, came back to Colorado and pitched the idea at some startup events, and people are like, I want my rent on my credit report. And everybody kept compiling it, and it took me about 2 years working with the first credit bureau to convince them that this was a good idea. So we were basically the pioneers of starting this industry. And we quickly
Renters have to opt into?
Pardon?
Is that something that renters need to opt into, or does it happen automatically?
There's no automatic way, because if you think about the rental market, 70% of renters is like me renting directly from you. And you don't have a phone number for the credit bureaus, nor do they have a system for you to call and say, call and pay this rent. Well, renters come to us, sign up, we go and verify that information with the landlord, and then report that information on their behalf to the credit bureau.
That's really cool, because it sounds obvious on the surface, right? Like
it does, yeah.
Your rent is going to be one of your biggest things that you're paying for on a regular schedule.
Exactly, yeah. And what's really beautiful about it is that we get to go back in time and report back to when somebody moved in. So your gentleman Anthony was about payment history. So we got somebody that has a 10-year-old rental. They've been there for 10 years. We just add 120 green check marks to the credit report in 2 days.
That is amazing. So everybody check out Rental Karma. Reyna, as a journalist, you've covered both personal finance and consumer behavior. Why do you think so many people know their GPA from school, but never really learn about the credit score formula?
Covering both health and wellness and also being an expert in both, a lot of people don't know the nutrients they're eating either. And so one interesting part about what Anthony was saying with credit score is what happens from my experience covering credit cards and award miles and all these different things that you earn, is people use their cards to earn these rewards, and then their credit score will drop because they maxed out their card or came close buying airline tickets, hotels, all these things. So learning the data reporting is really important. And it doesn't matter how much rewards you get if you're messing up your credit score to do it. But as long as you pay before it's reported, those few days before, I think it's really important. And then the other part that it comes down to when it comes to consumer behavior is just fear and feeling like you don't have a lot of control over it. But one thing that I wanted to emphasize is kind of which I'll get into more in other questions, a 1, 2, 3 boo approach. Which is to know what's on your credit reports, dispute when you can, focus on paying your bills on time. And then the third thing that we can also discuss later is start when you're paying off debt, start with the lowest balance credit card first, because if you have a limit of $500 and you pay off $50, you automatically drop the utilization rate on that card 10%. So it's an easy way to make a small dent without having to pay a fortune.
So I'm taking away from this first segment, pay attention to the dates. I mean, if you do nothing other than put some of those due dates in your calendar so that you don't forget about them, that's going to make a big difference. Anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, I tell people, go ahead.
No, Cullen, you go.
We have a lot of people that come to Rental Karma in that credit building process. It's not that they have bad credit. It's just they have very thin credit, and a lot of them don't even have a credit card yet. Literally, something like 35% of Americans don't even have one yet. And I explained to them, you know, 30% of your credit score is based on how you use a credit card. If you don't have one, it's like skipping 30% of the math test that has 100 questions. You got to ace the rest of the test just to get a C minus to 70. And they get, oh, I'm afraid of credit cards, Cullen. I don't want to use it. I understand that. And I tell them the simple way of doing it is you get one credit card. I don't care if it's $200, and you put Netflix or your cell phone bill on that, and you put it on auto pay, and you stick the card in the sock drawer, and that gets you that 30% of the test. This whole thing of 30% usage, I think a banker made that statement because they wanted to get all that interest on that 30% usage. I think that's really bad. I think the number should be 0 for your usage.
Howard?
The one thing I would say is that people need to be concerned with is not only how much credit they have now, but also they need to be very leery of people checking their credit, because every inquiry drops your score by 4%. I once had a car dealer call me, and they had an overzealous salesman try to find credit for, or a loan for one of their customers, and hit their credit and did inquiries like 20 times. 20 times 4 is 80 points. They lowered the person's credit score by 80 points, which is a tremendous amount. And especially when they were only in there for an hour, you spend your life building your credit. Unbeknownst to you, you may have somebody damage it. So you got to be really careful and really stingy of who can pull your credit. So be careful.
That's a great point, Howard. I tell people, we get a lot of people, I see credit reports, I look at them every day for our members, and that's a very common thing. It's not uncommon at all. It's what happens every time you go to the car dealer. I tell people, when you go to the grocery store, do you give the checkout person your social security number? No. You should never go and get a car loan at the car dealer. They are not the lender. They are your brokering you around to dozens of them behind your back. The best way to get a car loan is you go to the credit union, and you get there's no down payment to get a car loan. And they give you a piece of paper that says you're approved to get up to, $25,000 or whatever. That's like walking in with cash at the car dealer. And the car dealers don't like it because they want to make money on the back end from brokering you to some other lender that you don't even know and get to choose who your lender is. But it's the simple way to buy a car with no down payment and guaranteeing yourself a good interest rate and not getting 20 inquiries.
Reyna, you had something to add?
Yeah, so annualcreditreport.com is the website you go to get free credit reports from all three bureaus, the main ones. And what that will do, it's estimated that up to half of people have at least one error on the report. Those errors can obviously knock your score down, and it's just because of misreporting. So the easiest way to fix your score is actually dispute something, and that has nothing to do with your behavior on anything else. So all of this really starts with awareness, and that's a great place to start.
Great advice. Anthony, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, one thing is that they've now started to add what's called a safe harbor, which means you can apply for up to 4 different types of credit, and you'll get an unlimited number of inquiries without impacting your credit score. For example, if you apply for a mortgage, you could go apply for 10 different mortgages within a 45-day window. They will lump all of those inquiries into one, and one inquiry is typically 0 to 2 points or so, depending on your profile. So it's not a huge deal if you're one of these select categories. Student loans are another one. You can shop around for student loans. You can also apply for apartment loans. I'm sorry, not apartment loans, but apartments. If you're applying for a home, those will get lumped into just one inquiry. A key part to that, though, is don't think that you can apply for, a car loan, a student loan, a mortgage, and those are all going to get lumped into one. It's per category.
Great advice. We're covering a lot of ground here. Let's move on to segment 2.